Welcome everybody to another episode of Fast and Tierious. Today on the show, we got Chris Bryant from Bryant Works. Little claim to fame. He's making waves in the HubSpot ecosystem. You may call it a new royalty. I wouldn't call it so far called a prince, but there's a new royalty coming in the sense that he was on every single ranking. Never seen it before. That is, he's number 3, Partner of the Year in North America. Number 5, Customer Care in North America, and number 18 Partner of the Year above elite companies in his first year, and he is a one-man band. Welcome, Chris, to the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Excited to be here and tell the story.
This is the first time we've actually get to chat. I saw Bryant Works on the ranking, and I was like, what is happening? I'm excited to find out, what are you doing differently? Before we get into that, maybe what you're doing differently, maybe a part of a manifestation of where you started. How did you start Bryant Works and choose HubSpot as your specialty?
Yeah, so maybe probably 8-9 years ago, I worked for they're still a HubSpot partner. I worked for another agency. They shifted their business and I was their tools guy. And so I was tasked with learning HubSpot. This was before Sales Hub was a thing, Service Hub was a thing. Super basic marketing automations is all that was there. And we were helping out one client at a time. And I was just tasked with learning tools. So we decided to become a HubSpot partner. We actually did our partner onboarding at HubSpot offices. We flew from Louisville, Kentucky to HubSpot to do our onboarding in person because we thought it'd be cool to do it that way. It was cool. Made a video and all that other stuff about it. But that partner shifted the business to become more technical. And my role just didn't really fit that model. I wasn't a developer. And they shifted to just doing really great integrations. And they still do that today and coming up with really cool HubSpot apps as well. I went on to do other things. I was a front-end developer for a while because I could do front-end code, but back-end I didn't know. But all the time I was freelancing in the off hours. And what I initially thought I would do is website design because I can do front-end code is what I thought. But then I can't compete with everyone else that's living in other countries that can take a much lower wage, even though it's higher because of dollar currency conversion, all that jazz. So I was there's no way for me to compete in that market without, a race to the bottom. So I was I know this one tool. I took the advice of that agency owner at the time, and he said, you've just got to niche down into something. So I said, cool, I'm going to niche down into HubSpot as a tool. Got a couple clients, weird industries like baby sleep coaching to traditional CPG and other things like that. But it was cool to learn all the different use cases because the little bitty 2-person teams were doing just as complex things as the bigger orgs in some cases because they just had to be scrappier about it. Mm-hmm. So that's where I got started is just freelancing on the side. And then I did that for 2 years until one of my clients decided to hire me full time, but they were cool with me continuing to freelance on the side as long as it didn't interrupt day to day. So I continued to grow that side of the business and their side. And then there were changes there that happened. And eventually I just said, you know what, my goal was to make the same dollars as the full-time gig freelancing. And I just swap and then go into freelancing because I could scale that a lot faster. I could get more clients and blah, blah, blah. So that's where it started. And that was 6 years ago that I did that. And now to date, I have almost 10 years of experience on the platform across almost 600 different HubSpot accounts to date. And yeah, that's the experience right now. I've worked with Fortune 100s. I've worked with really big organizations. I continue to work with really small organizations, but that's where I'm at right now is what I found from the really large orgs is they want the specialist that they don't have to train up and teach somebody how their instance is set up and all that jazz. They want somebody who knows the platform like the back of their hand and just plug in immediately and start doing value add.
So as a recap so you officially signed HubSpot partner. What made you decide to say, I'm going to move from being a freelancer to, hey, I'm going to become a partner and enter the ecosystem?
It was when HubSpot changed how the partner, the modeling worked. So a lot of partners were upset with how the new pricing structure and the payouts and all that other stuff was structured. But that actually enticed me because it was really more so managed focused is what I was learning and being more in the accounts and that sort of thing. And I was that's my bread and butter. I don't sell software. I don't do cold emails and prospecting and all this other jazz. People come to me because I know HubSpot. So I end up just managing their instances or help them do X, Y, and Z or train their team or whatever. So back in March of last year, I said, you know what, I'm going to make this jump. I'm going to become a HubSpot partner because it looks like it's making sense now for me, because it doesn't look like the pressure to sell is so high. But then when I went back and started like looking, I was like, dang, I have upgraded a ton of accounts to just say, you guys got to go from starter to this, or you got to get Sales Pro or Service Pro. Like I've been selling but not selling sort of thing, of just like they're only buying because they know that the recommendation I'm making is going to work, but they just know, oh, I just got to go get this extra tool and it'll work the way I want it to work. And that's whenever I was like, yeah, I should have done this several years ago, but I did it this year. I had like my intro call with the partner team to even value, is this person real? Do they have that sort of thing? And the guy on the call, I've never taken one of these calls where the person I meet is elite managed day one whenever I talk to them. So that was really funny for them to say that. And I was like, I don't see why you're not a fit sort of thing. So that was funny from that perspective.
Yeah, it's just, I love hearing different stories and paths. So yours is, hey, I was a freelancer that over the course of a decade just got really good at HubSpot. And there may have been in the back of your mind an aspiration to start your own company, but it was something that happened out of, or a HubSpot partner, it was something that just happened through, I like to say, the same direction for a long time. And if you're in the same direction for a long time, niche down with the HubSpot, and now you come back in March of this year and you have elite managed on accident. You probably didn't know what that meant. You probably like, oh, I have elites managed. And to put some extra spice on this, being a partner of the year there's some other criteria, but the main criteria is number of upgraded or sold net new MER for HubSpot. And so he was saying this, hey, I don't do cold calls. I just upgrade people when they come to me. You outperformed the vast majority in selling. So HubSpot would say you sell HubSpots. So talk to me as how did you grow how do you, as a HubSpot partner, how do you get people to come to you? How did you grow the brand where when you decided to become a HubSpot partner, you're number 3 rookie of the year, right? Like it just happened.
Yeah. So I think some of that came from being inside of 600 some odd accounts. Is like the world is 6 degrees of separation. I think is like what it is, or 6. I can't remember exactly what the saying is everyone knows, like the network is a lot smaller than what we think it is in some cases. Oh yeah, I know that person. And that's what it ended up being for a lot of my clients, is just there's tons of referrals. They're like word of mouth, like introductions, cold emails. I'm on still several freelancer platforms where people can find me there. And then like the HubSpot partner, like the yellow pages of HubSpot. I can't think of the name of the directory. That's what I'm looking for. Couldn't think of the word. Yeah. So now there's the directory, and it's reviews and my own website and LinkedIn posts. And it's a true kind of omni-channel thing. But the vast majority of them are like, hey, email referrals. Hey, go talk to Chris. Chris knows this. DM him, shoot him an email. He'll answer, that sort of thing. I started like learning so much about the platform as I didn't focus. I forced myself every day to answer 5 posts on the HubSpot community, because the HubSpot community is still like very real businesses who have very real problems, but a lot of them are on starter accounts where they don't have access to the full-fledged support, or it's really complex accounts that are trying to do funky stuff. So I really forced myself to get in there, start answering questions, help people do weird stuff, because it wasn't like I had free time to figure out weird things that I didn't know were people's problems, because like I can hunt for clients and listen to X, Y, and Z, but when it gets down and dirty, there's a lot of that's rinse and repeat. You can find weird problems and learn new approaches to things by just helping people for free. Now, granted, I don't think anyone should work for free unless you absolutely want to, but it was something that I used for honing the skill set and like learning, oh yeah, this is the way to get around that. And now I can take that and say, yes, I know how to solve your problem. Invite me to your account and I'll do it right now. And that's where I started getting like a lot more word of mouth in that regard.
There's also the benefit of, I was thinking of, just as a side, is HubSpot has so many changes that you probably have to look back at your post and be like, that's no longer correct.
Yeah. I still get little emails every now and then, like whenever somebody replies to like a thing on the community and somebody will respond back, actually, this solution is no longer valid, blah, blah, blah. And I'll click on it and be like, I authored that solution in 2018. Of course it's no longer valid. That was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. It's funny when you're looking back. I've seen a couple of those. So
yeah.
So let's talk about how you got started, which I think I've never met in the same way. I've never met someone that elite day one. I haven't met someone on all three boards day one and started the way you started. So
Mhm.
it is a freelance first, probably Upwork, Fiverr, these places you can go,
Yep.
creating a book of business, providing
Mhm.
value in communities. Now there's places like Rev Genius and Sprocketeer and Wizard of
Yeah.
Ops and the community. There's all these places that are even
Mhm.
more robust now.
Yeah.
And my recommendation, pick one and go in.
Mhm.
If you spread yourself too thin, it's difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about navigating the HubSpot ecosystem today. So let's talk about where do you sit, or what's your tier, employees, revenue, how are you thinking about that? And then as you think about the year, 1 year in advance, what are you thinking
Yeah.
about this year for 2024?
So one of the right now, I am a diamond partner. If I look at my past trend and compare to what I need to do before, because if you're in the HubSpot ecosystem, your numbers or your points rather are on a 365 days. So like you start losing them 365 days from the time that you acquired those points. I would fall a little under hitting elite at the moment. So I do have to scale up on that side. I'm honestly not too worried about it. It'll happen. It happens. It's not a personal goal for me to hit elite. It'll be cool if it happens, but it's not something that I'm driving towards. Instead, what I'm driving towards is like what I want to do this year is I've recently hired a couple contractors, which I've always been very selfish, and my clients are my clients. I know their systems. They know that I know their systems, and I don't necessarily want to throw somebody in the middle of that, have to retrain them, and there's friction and new timing because so many people that I work with are so used to how fast I turn stuff around for them. And I have to because I have so many people that if I don't inbox zero myself every day, I'm constantly just digging myself out of a hole. So that's a problem. It's a cool problem, I think. My wife might say otherwise, but I think it's a cool problem right now. Where I want to go in about a year from now is to not have that problem, is to instead take and start with new clients and start introducing other team members who are like, I've made a couple strategic hires to be people that are very good at a very specific thing in HubSpot. Like I have an incredible CMS developer because too many times I was turning down CMS work. Like people would tap me to do their admin work and, oh, I need this landing page built. I'm like, don't do that. You got to go find somebody else. And I was like, well, that sucks because now I got to go talk to that person and help them coordinate that. And I should just bring it, not selfishly, but like in terms of making it easier on the client that they don't have to work with a team of 6 people to get one thing done. They just talk to Chris and it gets done. That is super appetizing to a lot of my clients to know that they only have to talk to Chris and Chris just makes it happen. So it's not necessarily like an anti-agency, but that's what it is I run the thing, but I'm also managing the thing and doing the qualification and all other stuff. But I want to shift that model into people who are very good at very specialized areas. And I want to make sure that the work I give them, they want to do. I hate when a client asks me, can you do an import? Or I don't hate it. It's more along those lines of, what my hourly rate is? Is that really where you want me to spend an hour at? Or would it be better to train a member of your team? It's not that I hate, that's the wrong word to use. It's just, I want them to see the value add of just doing a simple import, right? Or build a very simple form. There are people who can do this. I can train your team on how to do this, where you get more value add out of this, and it doesn't cost you my hourly rate because it shouldn't cost that much money to get a form built, for example, or like a very simple form. So that's where I want to be in the next year. Realistically, I think probably 2 to 3 years out, I will hire an actual full-time employee, but that's going to take some learning on my own side to like let go of the control side of it and be uncomfortable in that. But that's what I'm working towards in the next year, 2 years.
That's also when I'm talking on this show, there's degrees in between this, right? There's pendulum swings in between this, but you have people that grow up as solopreneurs and they're like, hey, we have something very special. I have something very remarkable and I want to keep it very remarkable. And it's not that I don't want to do this with others. It's that I just want to have a very remarkable experience. And so I'm going to slowly move into that. And I'm okay with that. Like that's totally okay.
Yeah.
And you have others, they're often with partners and they're coming in with 3 or 4 people at the same time. And they're looking to build, but it's different because they come in with people. And so it's just cool to see there are many different paths, all provide value, all can win. So it's just cool to see.
Yeah.
As you've been doing freelance work, you've turned into a solopreneur. I would call it a successful one. What were the challenges you faced as you think about, in the HubSpot, let's think 2 or 3 years, I don't know how many clients you actively manage. Sounds like a lot. what were the initial challenges you faced and how did you overcome them? If you think back, what are 3 things, if someone's talking to you as a mentor, what would you give them?
Yeah. So I didn't niche down soon enough. HubSpot is still very broad. I think now what I personally want to do is niche down even more into, like, when I look back at my client base, it's still a super broad category, but it's 50% are SaaS startups. And they're very incentive, but they're big startups. Some of them are not big startups, very successful startups now who have well outgrown that phase, which is cool. So I think, number one, I would niche down sooner. It's scary to niche down because you, as a freelancer, you're just trying to catch, you've got to make 20 proposals before you get one person. And now you're sudden, this guy's telling you to make 3 proposals and get one. Sometimes the numbers don't work out, but if you can go back and say, oh, I've helped other people in your exact industry do this exact thing, that's really valuable to clients. I think back to this story of, there's this marketer that I worked with on her. She brought me in for one of her HubSpot accounts. She only helped forklift dealerships. And I was like, that is super niched. Like, how do you even discover that niche? But that's all she did. And she had a lot of clients who were just forklift dealerships and helping them with their marketing. And I was like, that's a great example of niching down. I don't know if I would have the confidence to do that. That's the other thing, is you have to have the confidence in this. So you've got to be able to talk the talk, walk the walk sort of thing whenever it comes into number 2 as a freelancer. And I think number 3 as a freelancer is you have to execute on what you say you're going to do. And you have to be willing to own up to, I said I was going to do this, but it turns out I can't do this. You have to be willing to do some of that instead of just, because I see so many times a client will bring me in and be like, I hired this other person. They said they could do it. Now it's not possible. And I'm really frustrated, or they just ghosted me and all this other jazz. And it's really frustrating for the client. You just have to own up to say, look, I think we can do it this way. I'm going to try to do this thing, but I'm going to raise my hand very early on if I think that there's something wrong. And I know you said 3, but the 4th one, just because I think this is also really important too, is you have to be willing to push back against your clients to say, I see what you're trying to do. I don't think that's a good idea. And now I have the confidence, and now I have the data behind it to push back on people who are trying to do funky stuff and say, look, that's really funky. I think you should go this other way, which will meet like 90% of what you're trying to do with 10% of the effort, and be able to push back on those people earlier.
Everything you said is gold. The specific one that I find that in my past is that number 4. It is, I believe, both in sales and in delivery. And I think we don't do it in delivery as much. It is, I think what you're doing is going to lead to a poor result. Here's what I recommend to do. And if if that isn't telling them they can't do it that way, they still do it the other way. It's received. Hey, I will do it this way. Just know it may end up. Yeah. And there's a lot of what you just said takes experience. How do you know when to niche? How do you have the confidence? How do you have this confidence? Just get in and do it. And the faster you niche, the faster you can challenge, the faster you give recommendations, the better you'll be. What is, as you think about, if you look back, this is another way of asking these questions. And you've answered this in many ways already. So if there's something different, that'd be neat. It would be, what is one thing you would never do again?
Yeah, that's a really hard question. I think one thing that I would recommend never doing again is over-engineering. A lot of times whenever I would think, and this is on my part and also on the client part, like sometimes I would get into, hey, I want to have this full-on proposal and this 3-page document ready for this client so that they can see it and everything else. And it ends up just falling flat because, quite honestly, in the world that we are right now, people just read headlines for the most part. They very rarely read everything inside there. And they'll just, if a client gets that, they're going to scroll down to the bottom and see what the budget is. What's the cost? Because that's one thing that they care about. And then you'll get some clients who will read through the entire 12 pages of terms and conditions and be like, you didn't say this in here. I want to make sure that's in there. That's fine. I will probably never, and I try to do this today, never go into project pricing. And I think I'm comfortable doing that because I'm a solo person, that I can just build time and materials, because too often I found clients like, oh, I want to do this. And I'd have to say, that's a different thing. You didn't agree to do that. That's a change order. We got to go back to and get a new statement of work. And now all of a sudden the project's delayed 2 or 3 days because it's got to go over here. They got to sign it. Now I got to sign it. Now we can start. And it just ends up being like it just wastes everyone's time.
Yep.
Because a lot of times a client just wants to see end results. So that is probably something that I will never do again, is like writing up really crazy detailed proposals to get into a business. So sometimes it works, but I think whenever you niche down, you don't have to do that as much, because now you don't have to come up with this broader marketing proposal to cover every industry and all these different channels and all this other jazz. But because you've niched down into forklift dealerships, you can just say, I'm going to do your marketing for you as a forklift dealership. And you can use their language and everything else. And they get it. And they're like, cool, I like this. They speak my language. They know what they're talking about. I want to work with them, sort of thing. And that's where I think like those two can easily play into one another.
I should say yes. I highly recommend. Some people are very big project, but I think projects lead to antagonistic relationships with other people, even if you do it exactly what you want. And the longer they go, the higher the risk you incur, because what you want today, or what the client thinks they want today, is likely not what they want tomorrow, nor what they need today. And so it just change orders are inevitable. And they often lead to very difficult conversations that don't lead to recurring impact. So,
being able and this is very true for a solo person, being able to grow with your client is super important. Projects always have an end date to them in most cases. And it ends up being that the project's over. Now you got to go back and win the business all over again for project phase 2, phase 3, et cetera. And like in the model that I have now, I've got clients I've worked with as their admin for 4 or 5 years. To this point, like I know everything about their business and advise them on anything else. I'll get probably in the span of this interview, I've got an email from 2 or 3 of them saying, hey, can we do this? Or can you help me do this thing or train this new team member, which is cool. I like that stuff. But you get these ongoing relationships. They trust you. And in some cases, I'm like one of the most seasoned employees at the organization. Like I've been there one of the longest outside the founders, which is funny.
Chris, as we look in the future, what's the most excited thing, the thing that makes you most excited about HubSpot and the big bet you're making as you think about this next year or next 5 years? What's the big bet?
Yeah, so I think HubSpot will continue to move upstream. They did it last year with a lot of enterprise level features. They are continuing to do it. I think like last year was 400 to 450 different product releases. It's difficult to stay on top of them because not everyone hits that product updates panel. Sometimes they just sneak them in and it's incredible. Oh my God, this little bitty change just changes everything. I think that I will continue to move that direction with HubSpot as well, is not to discount smaller companies using the platform. I think the starter suite is like the best bang for your buck that you can get out of a tech stack today. Like it's a basic automations, but it's also $20 a month. Your business can run on it. Yes, it's more manual, but you can always upgrade to pro and you don't have to rebuild your tech stack from scratch to accompany that, which is really big. So I think that I will continue to go that direction. And like the big bet that I'm wanting to make on it is, I don't know why it's still a beta, is the CRM development, which is like creating custom cards and custom tabs and panels and all this other stuff. I think continuing to move that direction, HubSpot's going to introduce things that other enterprise users are used to seeing in systems like Salesforce, like approval flows and like screen flows and stuff like that. I think people will be building React cards. Like I've already seen some crazy CPQ stuff inside of like native React cards. I've seen other companies that I work with, they're hooking into it and integrating their app inside of HubSpot. I've seen people build custom thank you card things inside of there where like you type in the thank you card and it sends a handwritten note via like another API, which is like crazy cool that you can do that inside of the system. Like you are just like, even though the tech stack is growing behind the curtain, the front team doesn't see that. They're like, why just use HubSpot? It just works because it's just built. HubSpot had this clever saying of crafted, not cobbled. And I don't think they say that as much anymore, but it's still very true. Like opening up the whole React thing and the CRM development makes that even more true, to have people build their app within HubSpot, or like rather have their applications built, because I do a lot of SaaS stuff. Anybody that I see is on enterprise, like one of the first recommendations I'll be like is get your app talking to HubSpot. Get your app metrics in the platform so you have even more reporting and list and triggers and all this other stuff. So that's the bet that I'm making.
Yeah, I think it's a good bet to make. With HubSpot as the bimodal approach, and their new saying like simple yet powerful, I think they moved to after crafted not cobbled. I don't know where they're at right now. It's the idea of everything is still simple, although more powerful. And it's because it's crafted and not cobbled.
I agree.
So, Chris, thank you for joining us. If anybody wants to find you after today and they listen to this, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, bryantworks.com. You can search me on LinkedIn. I do live HubSpot office hours every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. People drop in, leave a question. Many times I'll get DMs after the fact. Shoot me DMs sooner so that way I can share screen and talk about it live with other people so everyone's getting the benefit. I think one thing too with the HubSpot is the HubSpot community is so friendly as compared to a lot of other platform communities. Not to diss any of them, but I've never been a part of a more friendly community around a tech tool. So I think like everyone's willing to help everyone. There's not a ton of competition between partners that I've experienced. And it's just like everyone's here to just help everyone else grow on the tool, which is really cool. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Bryant, or my website, bryantworks.com.
Chris, what number partner of the year will you be next year?
I honestly wasn't thinking I'd be partner of the year this year or last year rather. So I'm hoping to at least be top 15 because I was 18. I think it's it might be a tough hill to climb, but we're gonna try to get there.
Okay, I love it. You heard it here first, folks. We'll have to do another session when we see how we end it. Chris, appreciate the time. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Y'all stay awesome. Keep doing it big. Stay super. Adios.
Thanks.